Hey everybody, hope you're having a good day. Today is beginner guitar. Some more. We're carrying on. I think this is the third video that's strictly for just learning the guitar. And today we're going to work on the major scale. We're going to start with the G major scale because of those chords I taught you. G, C, and D. Hopefully you're pretty comfortable with those by now. They belong to this key. So I'll show you on the guitar, and then I've got a whiteboard where I drew it. I'll put it up there, so if you want to screenshot it or something, you can. But here we go. So frets wise, it's going to be 3, 5, 7, starting from the low string. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7 on the next string, the A string. Then we're going to go 4, 5, 7 on the D string and the G. 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7. And then on the B, we move up to 5. We go 5, 7, 8, and then 5, 7, 8 on the high E string. Now there's some important things to point out there. First one, where the roots are. G is the root, okay? So the first note is the root. That's what a root is. Root of the chord is the base of that chord. If we'll get into chord building later, but as of right now, so a G chord is built off the note G, so G therefore is the root. G major scale is a sequence of notes that occur starting from G in a certain fashion. That certain fashion is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and then you're back home. Okay, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now you're at the octave. So that makes that a root note as well. And then now if you go from there, you got whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, another root. You got a root again. Okay. The roots are important to know because they guide you on where you are. And we'll get into this later. As long as you know where any G note is, you could then build a major scale. Now, I want to point out another thing. This will be very important in the future. So remember this. The scale happens in sort of a sequence, right? Those two strings are the same. Those two strings are the same, 4, 5, 7. Now all of a sudden you got 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8 on these two strings. That's how this scale works. You're always going to have, I call them, this is what I call those patterns. This is a major. When you have that shape, I call that major. This one, I call diminished. There's a reason for that. This scale back here starts off the 7 chords diminished. I don't want to get too far off on that stuff right now. It's just look for the pattern. So this, what I call diminished shape of half step, whole step, happens 2 times in a row. And now, remember this one's the funny one. So your fourth is actually there, not here. So that's why you slide up to there. Now you've got 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. So those two happen twice in a row. This is going to become increasingly important to memorize that, because then you'll be able to make any scale, that including all the modes, on the fly based off of just knowing the sequence of how often you're going to see each shape. Now in a major scale, you're going to have major, major, diminished, diminished, minor, minor. I don't know if I said that a minute ago. I call that one the minor shape. When you go whole step, then a half, that's the minor shape. Now it could be that we'll run into it won't affect any of you, I suppose, but I may run into people watching these videos that are a little more experienced and be like, well, it should be this or that. just go with me. Like, every teacher has their way. This is how I look at those things, and this is how I look at a major scale. A major scale is a succession of those shapes happening in that order. Now, there are other major scale shapes. There's one called a box shape, and you do that. I do this shape that I just showed you for a reason, and will, as time goes on, it'll make more sense. The other thing I want to point out real quick today, right, we're worrying about it being a G major scale, but learn that shape, get your fingers doing it pretty smoothly, and then I want you to take that shape and move it around all over the fretboard. Why? Because if you started here, right, I'm sure by now you're thinking, okay, well, everything moved. It did. So your root went from there to there. If you move that to there, now you're playing an F major scale. It's that simple. It's really like, when you boil it all down and you know the shape, you know the pattern, then it's that simple of you just move it a whole step, and here you go. So when people, I guess, get upset, and they're like, why do I have to learn all these scales? It's like, you're not really learning all these scales. And as we go on, you'll see that the way I think of it, or the way I teach it, is you're really learning this one thing, and then everything is birthed from it. And so then this succession of the pattern will become very important. Like, you may have heard somebody say something about like a Dorian or a Phrygian scale. That scale involves that pattern just from a different point. So when we get there and I show you how this pattern works cyclically, I don't even know if that's a word, you'll see that, like, oh, if I just do a major, diminished, diminished, minor, minor, major, it's this scale. And it's still that same succession, just starting from a different point. The reason I point this out is because these videos for beginner guitarists and just guitarists in general are meant for people who are not necessarily interested in learning a ton of theory. Well, these shapes, patterns, positions really help you kind of circumvent thinking about all that. And then later, when you get to like improv, it's really important to know those shapes and the succession of notes in different ways and by intervals and all this stuff, because then you just fly through it. You don't have to think about it at all. I'm going to grab, right next to me here, I've got a whiteboard that I drew the G major scale on and circled the roots. So if you wanted to screenshot that, and I mark, which frets are what and where the nut is. Some of it might look backwards on your phone, because I haven't fully figured out how the camera does that. When you draw something, you flip it into the camera. I don't know. So we covered that. Now in the last video, we covered the old G, C, and D chord and power chords. This is for beginner guitarists, and then your exercises. Okay. Now, hopefully you keep working on those exercises. Now you got a new one because of this scale, right? These ones down here are going to be a little rough. They take a minute to get your hands in. Now, once you've memorized or got a pretty good feel of where those notes are, what I want you to do is take your power chords and find all the spots where they work. Now, real quick, I do want to finally cover the whole G to B string problem. So these strings, the reason the power chord works is because they're tuned in what's called a fourth. This one is tuned in a major third. So that means that in order to play a fourth, like you would down here, just by barring with your finger, now you gotta split it. You see that? We're on the 5th fret and the 6th fret, and that gives us a fourth. So then the 5th fret and the 8th fret is how you get your power chord way up between the G and the B string. Okay, and then the high 2 strings is back to normal. Also, so I've given you a scale. You've still got your G, C, and D chord. Okay, so that's new stuff. Got your exercises. Keep those moving. Get them moving more. You know, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get crazy and start playing like a nut, but get them moving. Get them moving quickly. You know, maybe take your major scale and just outline it. You know, skip whatever's in between. The whole point kind of my channel is to teach you, you know, guitar, music theory, and all these things. And of course, in these videos, it's guitar specific with kind of light on the theory. However, the whole point is I want you to think like you as a musician, okay? I don't want to teach you how I play. I want to teach you, and then you can figure out how you want to play. So that's... I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that. I don't want to like spoon feed my ideas. I want to show you techniques and then go, look, take them and place them on this thing, you know, like the power chords, like I said. Those all fit into G, fool around with them. Then maybe go into your strummy guys and see, you know, how do they work together? Do they work together? Does it make sense? That kind of stuff. And real quick, I want to cover one technique thing, just so that you can have a little more fun playing your power chords. I'm going to work in the palm mute today. Anybody into like rock and roll will know that you can hear it, right? You got... Okay, what that is, your bridge here. You rest the side of your hand just enough to get a little bounce in there, okay? Come up too far, you lose it. Back up just enough. Start working on that and take your power chords in. Try to move them around. Do stuff like that. Find kind of your own voice. The other thing I'm going to tell you real quick that goes with this whole G major thing is all the opens are in that key. They're okay. So you could find stuff and hit all the open ones with it. Just see, do I like that sound? Do I? I don't know. Do you? Look around for stuff. Anyhow, so that's the lesson for today. Just some more beginner guitar stuff. Thanks for watching. You're going to do awesome.